Down syndrome is a genetic disorder typically associated with characteristic facial appearance, developmental and cognitive delays, with more than 200,000 reported cases per year in the US alone, and diagnosis often requiring lab testing or imaging. Today, the world stands in recognition and solidarity of World Down Syndrome Day. While there is no known cure, treatments are available and can be lifelong. While persons joining supporting this cause, it's more than just wearing colorful socks. 284 Media, along with Ms. Lorna Dawson of the BVI Autism Center, seeks to raise awareness and educate on Down syndrome and other developmental diseases, symptoms, causes, treatment, and the importance of early detection. Everything you need to know. Stay tuned. You're watching 284 Media.
Money, 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 money! Madness! Mad! Mad! March Madness, only at CCT. CCT March Madness is back with even more crazier deals and giveaways. Top up $20 anywhere and everywhere and enter to win $500 every week in the month of March. Top up at the store, top up online, top up at your favorite top up spot, top up at a CCT promotion, and you just might walk away with money, 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 cause it's mad. March Madness, only at CCT, Life Unlimited.
Ms. Dawson, tell me exactly what is Down syndrome?
Okay, Down syndrome is a genetic condition. Human beings have 23 pairs of chromosomes, giving you 46. And in Down syndrome, for some reason, you have persons sometimes being born with an extra chromosome at number 21.
Okay.
So they end up, instead of a pair, at number 21 with three chromosomes there.
Okay. What are some of the main causes of Down syndrome?
I don't think that the cause has been identified as yet. What has been known to happen is that the older a woman is, the greater the chances, like persons in their 40s and beyond, the greater the chances of them having a child with Down syndrome. But they also find that even younger ladies now are having children with Down syndrome.
Okay. What are some of the risk factors for persons living with Down syndrome?
In regards to health, very often children or persons with Down syndrome have heart conditions. They usually have many of them have problems with vision, with hearing, and other medical issues.
Okay.
However, as medicine improves, you're having persons with Down syndrome living much longer and more fulfilling lives.
We are aware that in America alone, there are over 200,000 cases of Down syndrome. Tell me a little bit about the network of persons living with Down syndrome in the BVI.
Okay, in the BVI, as far as I'm aware, as I say, as far as I'm aware, we have, from where I work at social development, we have on record 17 persons with Down syndrome. We have one in preschool that we are currently seeing with early intervention. We have 3 who are in mainstream schools. And actually, no, it's more than 3 because we have some at SN Henley, and then we have adults, some at home, and some are at a day program that social development runs for adults with disabilities. Okay.
All right, let's talk about early intervention. How important is early detection, and what are some of the early signs of a child might have Down syndrome?
Okay. Usually, for persons with Down syndrome, the characteristics, the facial features in particular, are a bit different. You have slanted eyes. Very often, sometimes you have a tongue that drools. You have short fingers, and there's a mark in the palm that's sort of different from others. And that's when you see the face itself is sort of shorter.
So it's very visible.
Yes, visible. Okay. That's one of the disabilities that you see, and you know, okay, a person has Down syndrome, and it isn't bound by any race or economic status or anything. Anybody, anywhere you go, you find persons with Down syndrome.
Indeed, that is important to note, because there are a lot of misconceptions, and sometimes persons seem to think that it targets a different demographic, and that's not true, obviously.
No, definitely not.
How important is early detection?
Very important. In years gone by, persons, and it probably still happens sometimes, if a child is born with Down syndrome, very often the medical profession would have advised parents nothing is going to happen with that child, so you may as well institutionalize the child.
Wow.
And you had where a lot of children were kept at home. Now we're realizing, okay, the earlier you intervene, we already know that they're prone to certain health conditions. So you monitor those closely so that they don't really affect, too badly their development. You also know that they will have problems with speech because of the issues with their tongue. So very early, you begin to start working with speech therapy, teaching parents things that they can do to help stimulate the muscles for speech. They have low muscle tone, so you find them very floppy. They don't sit up,
Not
easily.
Much posture.
Right, and they're often very double jointed. Okay. So again, once parents are aware and they begin therapy early, they can begin to actually work on strengthening those areas so that the child can progress. They might progress a bit slower than children their age, but eventually they do get there.
What encouragement would you give to new parents who have just received a diagnosis saying that their child has Down syndrome?
Be thankful that your child is alive, okay, first of all. And don't be discouraged. Don't let anyone discourage you from loving your child, from wanting the best for your child. Be your child's best advocate. And always remember, very often, if a child is born with a disability, what often happens is that sometimes during that period when the parent is perhaps grieving, they don't give the child the kind of attention that they would have given their other children. But it's for this particular child that you actually need to intensify whatever actions, whatever you're doing, you have to be very intentional in trying to help that child. One of the professors that I've worked with in the past, he is an advocate of persons with disabilities, believes that anybody, regardless of their condition, their ability to learn and everything can be enhanced. You might not become a genius, but you can certainly move from the lowest rung of the ladder further up. And he's done quite a bit of work with children with Down syndrome. And he actually shared how when his son had a child with Down syndrome, while the son and his wife were basically like sort of grieving and wondering what to do. Because that happens. Right. He was rejoicing that he had a grandson with Down syndrome because he could actually now begin to work with this child and show them what, can happen. And he shared how in terms of just, you stick out your tongue at a child and they automatically try to imitate because of the weak muscles. And so a child with Down syndrome would not do that readily, would not do it easily. And he spoke about, one day sticking out his tongue 100 times until he got a response. And he got the response and then he built on that. But very often parents, the things that they might have done for a child and the child picked it up in, just a few, they get discouraged when they don't get that response with their children with Down syndrome or other disabilities. And I want to encourage them, don't stop. Whatever did worked for your other child in terms of getting responses, your interaction with them, continue. Just know that it's going to take more effort and it's going to take a longer time.
I'm very happy that you touched on that and use that example because a lot of persons and a lot of parents who receive the diagnosis sometimes feel like it's the end of the world. They go through a serious grieving process. Some think they've done something wrong. And they have the huge misconception that the child, for whatever reason, is not going to be happy and healthy and live a decent life. But your attitude definitely determines how that child grows and develops because your mindset now blocks. So I'm very happy that you use that example. How important would you say is attitude in dealing and interacting with a child?
Very, very important. And even as a parent, you set a tone with attitude and your attitude then actually like mushrooms out to other persons because you would find yourself maybe taking your child to school and teachers might not know how to interact with the child or might have an attitude, but if you're positive eventually and you're firm, okay, this is what I need for my child, this is what I want for my child, I'm going to advocate for my child, eventually people begin to see, okay, these things are possible. We also want, another thing I would like to advise parents, there are lots of stories out there, especially with social media, the internet. You go on YouTube. There's a website called themighty.com that shares stories of persons with health challenges. And lots of stories about persons who were, grieving initially, or who were told institutionalize your child, and they went with the instinct, this is my child, I have this child for a reason, and I'm going to do the best that I can do for my child. Another book I would recommend that has some marvelous stories is Chicken Soup for the Soul. There's one for children with special needs. At the Autism Center, I'm jumping ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
At the Autism Center, we have a little resource library where we keep videos, books on how to do things, and stories that can be read to children, stories for adults. And at the center, we have a copy of Chicken Soup for the children with special needs. We also have one for children on the spectrum that has in lots of stories that can encourage parents, because sometimes you feel you're alone. And when you read about things and you see, okay, I'm not alone, somebody else's experience is the same thing, it encourages you. And also, just newly formed, or they're trying to get going, we have a set of parents who have children with Down syndrome who've recently started meeting.
Wonderful.
And so they're there, they're supporting each other. You have some of them who've lived abroad and now they're back at home. So of course, they're also bringing the experiences.
And strengthening the network.
Right.
The BVI. Tell me a little bit about your organization, the BVI Autism Center, and the role you guys play in assisting the community.
Okay, the Autism Center was opened in 2012. When we initially opened, we opened under the Ministry of Health and Social Development as a unit. In 2016, I think it was, we became a part of Social Development Department, the Disability Services Unit. So I supervise that unit, and within that unit, we have the Autism Center. We are located in Lower Estate, upstairs the Rainbow Children's Home. We have BVI Services, which is a day program for adults with disabilities, and we also deal with early intervention. Okay. So our role, we provide services for persons with disabilities, both children and adults, in terms of helping them to develop skills that will help them, improve their lot in life, and help them in society. So we work on cognitive skills, we work on developmental skills. We ourselves don't have like a speech therapist or occupational therapist, but we do make referrals, and in our work, because we've learned to interact and reach out to those therapists and get ideas in terms of how to work if we're seeing a particular problem, how to work with a child. We also try to do a lot of work with awareness, making persons aware about disabilities, trying to reduce the stigma in society, because there's still some people who are not comfortable taking their children out into society because of stares and that sort of thing. So we're working on that whole awareness and making the community aware. We are all born in God's sight. We are created all special.
Wonderful. How can persons get in contact with your organization?
We can be reached at 468-3672.
All right.
And the Autism Center also has a Facebook page, BVI Autism Center, and our email address is autism@gov.vg.
Where exactly are you guys located again?
We are located in Lower Estate, upstairs the Rainbow Children's Home. We come straight up the road past the basketball court.
All right. Tell me in a nutshell, what can we do as a territory to support persons living and children living with Down syndrome in the Virgin Islands? What should we be paying more attention to as it pertains to our children with Down syndrome?
First of all, acceptance, accepting them and cutting down, and speaking to our children, because I took part in a match going a bit further some time ago, and there was a child with Down syndrome standing on the side observing the match. And there were some children in front of me, and one of them said, "Oh, that boy goes to our school, he retarded." And that's a word, but I was glad that another student was able to say, "No, we don't say that."
Wonderful.
So having conversations, acknowledging that we all have their disabilities, whether it's Down syndrome or whatever, having those conversations and recognizing that they should be given opportunities just like everybody else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and clearing those misconceptions and telling us about your organization.
Thank you.
Get online today with CCT Go Fast LTE. Simply select from any one of our Go Fast LTE plan options. Each plan offers unlimited wireless residential internet and are priced to suit your budget and required data speed. Stop by any one of our locations and speak with one of our representatives. And get online with Go Fast LTE, the BVI's preferred choice for reliability, speed, and affordability. CCT Life Unlimited.